Do you have a burning question on the process of how to make comics? Well, for the next hour or so, I'm here to answer all your questions to the best of my ability. So let's get to it. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Surfworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where together we're going to create some awesome comics, because this is Making Comics 101 Live. And if it wasn't clear from that title, this is based on the series I did, Making Comics 101, which will take you step by step through the process of making comics, everything with coming up with your idea, all the way to finishing your product, putting it out there, publishing it, and all those steps in between. So if you haven't checked that out, there is a playlist, and it's at this point it's more than 70 episodes long if you include these live episodes. So definitely check it out. It's going to tell a lot of this stuff, and some of the questions that I'm going to answer today I've probably covered before, but I will go into those because sometimes it is hard to kind of find out exactly what you're looking for, but they're all cataloged pretty well. You know, one episode is on penciling, one is on inking, one is on writing, one is on plotting, you know, whatever the case is. So if you kind of have an idea what your question is, it's probably in one of those episodes. And like I said, you could watch it all the way through, or you could just pick and choose what particular discipline or what particular area you want to learn about at that time. But go check out that series. But I'm super excited to get started with this because I am kind of getting back into, after a long hiatus, my comic book, Young and the Dead. I've decided that, you know, next year I'm going to buckle down and I'm getting back into producing that. So I'm going to start doing some warm-up sketches. But so this is my comic book, Young and the Dead. It is a kids versus zombie story. It's like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. So kids, you know, fighting zombies in a zombie apocalypse, and it's a lot of fun. It's an homage to like those 80s kid adventure movies like Goonies and Monster Squad, Explorers, all that stuff, but with zombies. So that's my book. And like I said, I'm getting back into it. So I'm going to actually just warm up and kind of get back into, you know, drawing my characters. Some of these characters I haven't drawn in a little while. So while I do that, I am going to take your questions. So without any further delay, we are going to get to the live Q&A portion right now. Okay, hey everyone, welcome to another live edition of Making Comics 101. If you're in the chat, if you could just let me know if you can hear me. Last time we did this, we had some technical difficulties the first time around. So if you can hear me, let me know, so I know that I'm just not talking and no one's hearing. There's a very specific way you have to set this thing up the way I'm doing it. If you don't do it in a certain order, then people just can't hear you. So anyway, I'm just going to wait for confirmation, and there is a little bit of a delay, so between what I'm saying, what you guys hear. So I'm just going to go ahead and hopefully, hopefully you guys can hear me, but do let me know. And so actually, let me type that in here, just in case you can't hear me. Okay, great. Awesome. Yeah, so I got some people in the chat. So I got a bunch of questions that people submitted in other videos or just from my post about this that I will get to, and also let me know in the chat. If you do have a question, if you can, when you're typing that in the chat, if you can just put question before it, makes it a little easier to identify. But I'm going to start off with this from Mert Sensor. Hey Scott, can you explain how to draw more good? Yeah, so you know, this is probably kind of a non-answer because it's probably what you're expecting to hear. But what I always like to say is the 3 Ps, which are practice, patience, and persistence. And really, that's what it takes. You've got to practice. Now, I mean, we live in this wonderful age where, you know, people, I guess like myself right now, are putting this information out there. It's a little hard for me to go into how to draw in a video like this, but there are tons of drawing videos out there, and you guys can just go online and consume all that stuff. And you know, you start with kind of like what I'm doing now. I mean, if you just look at this as a visual, you can see how I'm just kind of doing some gestures. You know, you learn your proportions, all that stuff. And the video series, Making Comics 101, I
talk. I mean, I don't do a lot of like live demo, like how to draw, that type of thing, because again, there's just so much involved, and it is an undertaking, and that's why you have to be patient with it and know that you're probably not going to be you're not going to be great right out of the gate. It's going to take a lot of practice, patience, and persistence. So that's just my number one. That's kind of my go-to answer for that type of thing. How to draw. I know that was kind of a, you know, the way it was phrased, I can tell it was kind of in jest a little bit, but obviously we all want to learn how to draw better, and, you know, and I'm constantly getting better, and I'll probably never be as good as I'd like to be. All right, so let's start off here. So this one's from Salazar Art Nation. Do you recommend, here, let me get my glasses here so I can see this a little better. All right. Do you recommend being part of anthologies to get your name out there in the comics community? Absolutely. I think anthologies goes with my other number one rule, or number one thing that I say, and that is just to, you know, start small. If this is your first comic, start small with like a 4-pager, maybe at the most like an 8-pager. Don't take on too much. And anthologies are designed for that, where everyone's contributing. So usually the stories are a little smaller. It'll get you taste, and it'll allow you to get published. And not to say that just making a mini comic and putting it out there and maybe bringing it to your comic book store or whatever isn't publishing. That is a form of publishing. But the other thing is it's a little low cost, because depending on how it's structured, say if everyone pitches in, or like we've done with the Making Comics or the 100 Days of Making Comics anthologies, where we run a Kickstarter and no one really makes any money, but they do get copies of their books that they can turn around and sell those books, so everyone contributes. So yeah, I would say an anthology is an excellent way to, you know, and plus, you know, the way the Making Comics, I keep saying Making Comics 101, but the way I'm just drawing, my mind is going crazy because it's been so long. The 100 Days of Making Comics, the way that one was structured was anyone that had completed the challenge, it doesn't matter your skill level or anything, is eligible to be in that book, was eligible to be in that book. So, you know, and that's a really good thing for up and comers, because you're in a book alongside of, you know, some industry professionals, some people that, you know, have been doing this for a lot longer, and that can be a little intimidating, because you are kind of in that same book with you know, some of these more established artists. But the way that was structured was, hey, you know, this isn't necessarily about that skill level. It's about people who can complete something and get something done. And because there was that prerequisite with, you have to have completed that challenge, because that's one of the main things. It's people that are willing to put in the effort and, you know, and do that. I mean, and go through that process and make a comic, regardless of, you know, how well it's drawn or how well the story is. I mean, part of being successful in anything is just doing it, and you will get better. And if you're persistent with that, again, going back to what I said before about the 3 Ps, then you're going to do a lot better than somebody who's a great artist that just never puts anything out there, that never completes anything. Because what good is being a great artist or writer if no one ever sees your work? So yeah, anthologies, I highly recommend anthologies. And it's something that you can even start your own if you don't know where to go with that. You can always, you know, start up your own anthology, get a community of other artists involved. But there's a lot of those, and there's a lot that I would have liked to participate in that I didn't. I know I'm waiting. I'm supposed to be getting some stuff for some anthologies that other people that I know. I think Frank was involved in one. So I'm anxious to see those. All right, so here's another question here. This is from Zedfinant. Disney once said, "We don't write stories, we draw them." Mad Max Fury Road doesn't doesn't have a script. Instead, it's made up of just a storyboard. Is it a good idea as a creator to skip scripts altogether and jump straight to drawing stories? And this is a really good question because let me just first off tell you how I work. I do work from a full script. I like that, but that's a personal preference. I like to, I like to plot everything out, and then I like to have a full script ready when I go to start drawing. Now, that being said, sometimes that will change as I'm working. As I'm drawing and everything. Sometimes the things in the script may not work, or I might find a better way to do it. But I prefer to kind of work off of a full script when I do a comic. Especially, and I mostly do my own work. I mostly do my own projects. I don't do a lot of collaborations unless you're talking about like what we talked about before with anthologies, but where there's a bunch of people contributing, but they're all their own individual products that comes together as a whole. So that's just how I prefer to work, or I have worked. But that being said, I don't think that is right for everyone, and it kind of goes back to the whole idea of just working from a plot and not having a script. I mean, that's the Marvel method. That's the way, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and all the early Marvel artists, and that's how that worked. Was basically, my understanding is Stan Lee came up with sort of an idea, a rough idea. He said, I want Stan Lee's like, I want Spider-Man to fight the Fantastic Four, and or whatever it is, on the top of this building, and and then whatever the case is, and then they hand it off to Jack Kirby, and you have to figure out how to make it work. I mean, Spider-Man fighting the Fantastic Four, they're both heroes, so there's got to be some misunderstanding or whatever. So Jack Kirby would run with that. He'd draw the whole thing, basically in a lot of ways creating the story, and then hand it back to Stan Lee, who would fill in all the dialogue. So he'd look at Jack's pencils and then say, oh, I think the thing is going to say this, or Spider-Man's going to crack wise about this, or whatever the case. So, I mean, that is a perfectly, I don't know, I really doubt that Marvel works that way anymore, and it may just be up to individual artists. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I mean, you don't need a full script. I mean, I think, and it's really how you're comfortable. I'm more comfortable with a little bit more structure like that, but I still think it'd be a very good experiment for me to try it, sort of that Marvel method, where I just draw and kind of see what I come up with, where that story goes. So, okay, we do have some questions here. So let's see. Let's start here. Okay, make a difference. Do you think comics market get better by time? Because many artists are just this thing. Because many artists, this thing is dying. Okay, and let's see. Hold on a second, because I had another. Let's see. I thought I had another question that was similar to that, so I might group these together. Let's see if I can find that. Well, anyway, if I come back to it, so it's going to evolve. I think. Here, I know I had that. Where is it? Where is that? Okay, here. So this is from, hopefully I don't butcher this, Rome Tickland. My question focuses on the future of the comics industry and where you see it heading and where it will end up in the next decade, 25 years. I'm referring to comics at the indie level, as well as major comics companies like Marvel and DC, and other tier companies in between. Thanks, Scott. So I think this one goes pretty good with make a difference, this question. So, and I don't know if I'm the best person to really answer this. I'm not really good at predicting, where the industry is going to go. I can give you my opinion, but just let you know that's what it is, and it's my opinion. Where do I think the market is? Do I think it's going to get better? It's going to change, I think. I mean, there's so many. I don't know. I really don't know if floppy comics are what the future of floppy comics, especially from the big two. You're always going to have floppies from independent artists. And I think kind of that's where things are going to go. I mean, you think now that people can crowdfund their own thing, and the success of some of these crowdfunding projects online, and a lot of them are for either smaller, what some people might say like a trade, but even like for individual issues. And I've seen people I've done individual issue Kickstarters and stuff, and they've done all right. So I think I think as long as people want to draw, and write, and as long as people are willing to pick that up, it may change. It may not be floppies. It may be more of a collection. Who knows what the big two are going to do. Comic book stores, I mean, you've already seen a shift where a lot of comic book stores, they're focusing more on like gaming and all the ancillary things like, Funko Pops and things like that in order to stay afloat. So I know my local comic store, they kind of double down on comics, but they also do a lot of where they commission artists to do special covers and variants and things like that. So it's a lot of that kind of thing that is comic adjacent, but is still propping up that, the comic book stores. So I don't really know the future. I think there's going to be a lot of changes. As far as where comics are going, maybe you're going to start to see, I don't know if we're going to start to see moving away from just, because in the US it's very much superheroes, whereas there's so many different kinds of comics that, and with the kind of popularity and the rise of like manga and all ages comics that you don't necessarily even see some of the biggest sellers are things like Smile by Raina Telgemeier, stuff like that. That's not, you're probably not going to see a lot of that in your average comic stores, but it's like these are some of the best selling comics that are for that kind of young adult market that you're going to see, either online or whatever brick and mortar bookstores are left. And through stuff like Scholastic, the book program in the schools and things like that, these are the things that are selling. So comics is going to continue. The other thing is like with digital, I don't know that I think it's safe to say now that I don't think digital is going to, as far as comics go, I don't think digital is going to take over, because it would have done that. I mean, physical books are still comic books anyway, are still outselling digital. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I think it's probably less expensive in some ways and easier to kind of collect digital stuff, but I think people still want that physical book, and it's showing. I mean, a lot of people were just predicting that once digital became more readily available, that would be the end of books, but I don't really see that. So those are some of my thoughts. I don't know that as far as the comment, the one on the screen, I don't know that the artist thing is dying. I mean, people still love to draw, and as far as the payment for artists, and I've talked about this before from the big two, and kind of it's not great what those companies are paying, and people still want to work for them and everything, and to work on those big titles. But again, you look at some of the success, if you can build some sort of a following and create success on platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or if you can find a way to just, if you have a big enough audience to just, fund something, raise the money for something like that on your own, that's going to continue. I mean, comic stories are going to be around. It's like music. That industry changed, but people are never going to be at the point where they don't want to listen to music anymore. So it's just the way it's delivered and purchased and all that stuff. So I don't really know. I hate to try to predict that, but those are just some of my thoughts. So, all right, let's get to some other questions here. All right, question: do you make all of your comics yourself, or do you ever collaborate with other writers, artists, colorists, etc.? Is it hard to give up control? Yeah, I mean, and again, this is my, and that's from Ed Woosley. I kind of prefer, I'm kind of a control freak in a lot of ways, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I don't, as far as comics, I don't do a lot of collaborating unless it is with like I said, where I'm doing my own story, other people doing my own story, and we put it into some sort of a collection. I don't necessarily recommend that for others, because I think collaboration is an awesome thing. And there are times, I mean, I could see collaborating with somebody on something if it was the right project, and it was something we both have passion for. For me, I don't necessarily want to be like a hired hand to work on somebody else's idea unless for whatever reason, unless I really, really love it. I just want to, I've got so many ideas, my own ideas, that I'll probably never even get to, that I don't see doing a lot of collaboration, just because, although, you know, it would definitely speed up my process if I had the wherewithal to hire people to maybe ink my work or color my work or whatever. I could basically see doing that. But as far as the story, and also I could see if I got to the point where I could afford to hire artists and things like that and pay them a decent wage, I could see where, you know, I would just write some stories and have other artists illustrate it, because I'd love to see other artists you know, work on my stories. But as far as me drawing other people's ideas, I'm kind of trying to move away from that in other aspects outside of comics, where I want to work on what I want to work on. So and that's a personal thing. Like I said, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend that for everyone else, because I do think it's a good thing to collaborate with others, and it's also, you know, it takes a lot of the burden off yourself, as long as it's gotta work though. I mean, everyone has to have the same, they've all got to be in it for the same, you know, because they love that project, or else I don't think it's going to come out as good. So anyway, so that's some of my thoughts on that. Let's see, we get another question here. I'm Stupid and Smart says, question: how do you solve struggle to improve drawing skills effectively? I'm kind of going to go back to the same thing I talked about before, where you just got to practice and just know, and don't try not to compare yourself so much to others, but do compare yourself to the you of the past. So for instance, because I'm talking about, you know, patience and persistence, as you create them, and the more you create, obviously it's almost impossible for you to keep drawing and not get better at it. So compare yourself to where you were like 3 months ago, if you're constantly drawing, or a year ago, and let that kind of, you know, once you can look back and say, wow, I can do this a lot better than I did. And you see people post videos all the time where it's like, this is me back in 2018. This is me now, the same drawing, and they'll do the same drawing. You can see how much better it looks in, you know, whatever, 3 years time or 6 months time. And for younger people, that seems like a long time, 3 years or whatever. But in the grand scheme of things, it's really not. And that's what it takes. If you want to do this, you got to be in it for the long haul, because it takes a long time to get better and everything. So it's really, you know, there's a phrase called compare and despair, where if you are, and you do need to look at other artists because you learn from other artists, but you got to realize that these people have probably been doing it longer. They've got more hours under their belt, and that's why their stuff probably looks a lot better. So you got to get that in your head, and also if you're watching what they're doing online, you're only seeing the stuff that they think is good enough to put online. You're not seeing all the bad sketches and things like that. Whereas with yourself, you're seeing everything. So just understand that. And I think it's a lot of it is, you know, whether it's psyching yourself up or getting in the right state of mind. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the struggle, is like, and every artist has been through it too. So know that you're not alone. I mean, you know, I don't know. And sometimes when you're younger, I think you don't worry so much about that. When I was real young, I didn't worry so much about my drawings being bad. I just wanted to draw. I wanted to create. And you kind of got to get in that mindset as well, where maybe it doesn't matter how good it is, as long as you're putting stuff out there, as long as you're learning, as long as you're getting better, and as long as you're able to tell your stories. And the more you do that, each subsequent product that you put out there, comic books or whatever, is going to get a little better. So just know that. So that's sort of my answer to that question. Okay. Oops. So this is a question from Tally. Excuse me. Hold on. Question: do you use 3D models to create reference? I've got another question on reference, so I'll probably go into that after this one. But I don't. but that's mostly because I I don't know how to, like, there was a time where I wanted to teach myself, I don't know if it's still around or if it's somebody else, if it was sold to somebody, but Google SketchUp. For a while, I wanted to learn how to create some of my props and cities and things in SketchUp. And for me, it's hard for me to wrap my head around like 3D drawing programs, even something as like Google SketchUp, which is pretty intuitive. And I'm sure if I would have stuck with it, I would have got better at it. And I have in the past. I've built like simple shapes and things, and I've rotated them and everything and used that. But I don't do that. I don't do that a lot. But that's partially because now I know there are ready-made models, and come to think of it, I think I have. I think and sometimes that stuff's just hard to find, and sometimes with reference, it takes a long time to track that down. So sometimes for me, it's easier, rather than spending, hours looking for the perfect thing, to just kind of try to figure it out myself using cubes and cylinders and all that kind of stuff. But there's definitely nothing wrong with using 3D models. I know that a lot of that stuff is included in Clip Studio Paint. I've never really dove into that, but yeah, I mean, if those things help you out, by all means use them. Just personally, I don't use them a lot, but if I had the perfect 3D model, or if I have, say I've got I'm working on this space epic, and there's a spaceship that is constantly, in my story, and I'm going to need to see that from different angles. If I don't know how to design that myself in like a 3D program, it might even make sense to commission somebody to create that for you, some 3D artist or whatever, because it's just so much easier if you have like a 3D model. I mean, I have taken things like Hot Wheel cars or whatever, and just have those where I can kind of rotate them and look at them from different angles to help draw vehicles and things like that. So, and that's essentially kind of the same thing. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about using reference. And so I'm gonna kind of dovetail that into another question about references. Let's see, where was that one here? Let's see. Yeah, okay, this is from John Tube 2K. The question I have is, how often do you need or should you use reference? Should I limit myself for the sake of my own creativity? For instance, is it frowned upon to use references for every single panel in your comic? Does it even matter? Is it frowned upon? I don't know. Some people do. Some people frown upon it. I don't think that I definitely don't, and I don't think you should. Like, I look at, like, if you guys are familiar with Dan Ekus, I watch a lot of his videos, and I would consider him a friend. I've had him on the show and stuff. And he uses a lot of photo reference, and you can tell it's, what he's drawing, and it's when he'll have his photo reference up on the screen, and then he'll be drawing his, whatever, a panel or whatever. And the thing that I don't understand, and I've got to ask him this, because I'm just wondering where he finds all these references, or how long it takes him to find that, because I know there's been times where I'm like, oh, I really need to find this particular pose or whatever. And even the drawings that you see here that I'm drawing right now, I had some photo references on the screen for those particular poses to kind of help me out. But he seems to find just the right pose and everything, especially, finding a pose for like a pinup like this isn't a problem, but when you're trying to tell a story and you want people to do certain things, so he's really good at picking those out, and I'm just wondering how long he actually spends looking for that reference. But yeah, I mean, and his work looks great, and there's he uses a lot of reference. I don't have any problem with using reference. Even if you, and like my, Joshua Kimball, who I do the Artcasters with, because his stuff is all mostly auto bio, he'll do photo sessions of him or his wife or whoever other characters are in the story, or even if it's somebody else, he might use himself. And I've done that too, where I've put a camera up and posed it and done poses and things like that, because that's a good way to get poses exactly how you want them. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can't look at Josh's work and say that he's like slacking or something, because he puts so much into it, but he does use a lot of photo reference. So there's definitely nothing wrong with photo reference. And most people that kind of frown on that, honestly, I find that there are more people that aren't experienced artists. Now you can't, I mean, like anything else, you can use it as a crutch. I think you really should do your best to learn anatomy and learn how to draw things without reference. But there's no shame in using reference. I mean, Michelangelo, all the greatest artists in the world that I've ever been have used reference. So that, you know, to say that, oh, I don't use reference and I'm a better artist, like, are you better than Michelangelo? Really? Okay. So so yeah, I wouldn't worry so much about that. Let's see, did I address everything? Yeah. So does it even matter, he says? I don't really think so. I mean, it's up to you. Don't use it as a crutch, but don't be afraid to use references. So, okay, here we go. Here's some more questions here. Let's see. Quill Cox Art. Hello, Scott and chat. Question: when it comes to detail in panels, is there any general rule for how small to too small, or at what point it will no longer be picked up on repro? Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's people like, was it Jeff Thoreau? Is he the one? Am I thinking the right person? The one that you've got all this detail, and sometimes, but it's a stylistic thing, you know. I mean, some of it there's just so much in there that you can't. I mean, you can't even make it out. But sometimes it's kind of interesting to look at somebody like that and look at their artwork and see all the little details and things like that. Whether you need to do that, and this can be something that becomes a problem when you're working digital, like you see on the screen, because you have that infinite zoom, and you can zoom in. Like I could go in, like, and I do this. I'll do this when I get into drawing like the eyes and things like that, where I zoom in. But if you zoom in too much, then the detail is just so much that when it's reduced, or when it's brought up to actual size, it can get too much. But so yeah, it's a little bit, you know, part of it's your own taste, but yeah, I would be wary of too much detail, and I don't think every panel has to have a ton of detail. I mean, I'm a big believer, like you set up your establishing shots. That's where you want to see most of your detail, so you can see where you are in this world that you've created. And then after that, some panels might not need anything in the background. Some may just need a little hint of something. For instance, you may see just a street lamp behind somebody to know that you're still in a street setting, or something inside, like a picture hung on a wall, just to let you know that you're inside once you've done that establishing shot. So I don't think you need that much detail. And again, a lot of it's a stylistic choice, how much detail you want to put. Some people don't put that much, some people put a lot, but you can, I mean, there is, you know, you can't, and going back to Joshua Kimball, I mean, he draws huge, and then, but when he reduces it, you know, it seems like it's more detailed, even though he drew it little bigger. You have to watch out for that. But I mean, the reason why people work bigger is that because when it's reduced, I don't know, a lot of times it just looks better. So so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't worry too much about if you're not putting enough detail in. The main thing is storytelling. You want people to know where people to know where they are in the story. You want, you know, so I mean, and a lot of that does come down to some of the details you put in the back. And I'm talking about backgrounds, but it's not always backgrounds. It could be the foreground figures and everything. And you know, and I like all kinds of different artists. Some artists I like because they have a lot of detail. Some people I like because it's really streamlined. So it's kind of it's more of a personal choice. But just the thing about personal choices, you got to know why you're doing it. I mean, is there a reason behind it? That's what you should always be asking yourself when you're drawing. Is there a reason behind, like, you look at, if you're doing a lot of cross hatching, like the stuff that you see, like Todd McFarlane, he's got all these little lines, and some of it's just dressing, just, you know, to, you know, and some of it's to hide something, you know, maybe the more lines in there, sometimes that takes your eye away from maybe some anatomy that's not as great or whatever like that. Whereas if you draw really, you know, I draw more simplistic, so that's why a lot of times you can see when my anatomy's off, because there's not a lot to kind of draw your eye away from that. So in some ways, that's a reason. Those extra little lines can be a way to kind of draw your eye away from some of your shortcomings. So I guess that's a reason. But whatever the case is, whatever detail you're putting in there, is there a reason for it? Or whatever you're doing in comics, is there a reason? So, all right, let's see. We got some more questions here. All right, Ariana Howard. Hey, yo, Scott, how's it going? I'm trying to create a website called awasomehypecomics.com, and I'm trying to start my webcomic. Do you know any websites where I can share my comics? Okay, yeah, and I got a series of questions about that as well. I don't publish a lot of like usually I'll just, and not that this, again, I always have to disqualify things the way I do things. Just because I do something a certain way doesn't mean I recommend it for others. For instance, I don't put a lot of my comics out there free to read, like on some of the web comic sites and things like that. And that's not because I don't think there's anything wrong with it or that devalues the artwork. It's just that I haven't really got around to doing it, or I'm afraid that if I start doing that, I'm going to fall behind and I'm not going to be able to keep up the schedule or whatever the case is. But you know, as far as sites like that, I mean, there's Webtoons, there's Tapas. If you've got completed volumes, like you can put those up on Comixology. So, and there's more. There's the Duck, I think, is another one. So there's tons. Just look up web comics sites. But yeah, there's plenty of places you can put your comics on, and you can build readerships through there. And you know, and I don't even think that there's a problem with putting it on if you have the time, and if you can do it, if you can put it on more than one, because you never know really which one's going to hit or which one's going to get the most traffic. So yeah, I would say, you know, these are pretty common, so maybe you've already heard of them, but I don't really know a whole lot of other ones, even though I'm sure if you did some research, you could. But again, Tapas, Webtoons, The Duck, and you know, Comixology, those types of websites. Okay, and continuing on, is it wrong to ask somebody to remake your comics so that it's more epic, since art, perspective, and background isn't something you're really good at? And the whole idea of wrong, a lot of times, I don't think really anything, there's very few times where I would say something is wrong, because it's art, and art is subjective. So the one thing I'm going to kind of maybe go into, because this brings up a good point, is that I wouldn't, and it sounds like you're asking somebody else to remake it, and that's fine. I mean, I would even probably, if you know somebody that could do that, and if you've got the money to hire them or whatever, if there's something in it that would make them want to, you know, redraw what you're doing, if you're not as happy or you think you'd be better with another artist. And there are some projects, some properties that you know, that I could definitely pick out people that would be better executing it than myself. So I wouldn't have any problem with that. The problem you want to avoid is if you are constantly redoing your own artwork, you know, because you're not happy with it, because that's one of those traps you fall in, and a trap that I fell in early on, where my first comic, first time I really decided I really want to make this great comic, and I've got pages, and I've showed them before, where I've redrawn these first 4 pages like 5 times, and it does get better each time. So that's a way to learn. But for me, it's better advice just to let that be what it is, and then get better on your next project, because then at least you have something to show for it. Whereas my first comic never came out because I could never get it. I could never get it to where I wanted. So, and again, there's exceptions to every rule. I know some people that have redone their comic and it was to their benefit, but I think those are probably the exceptions to the rule. So, so yeah, I mean, if you want to have somebody else do that, you know, that's fine. But ask yourself, is that going to improve it, or is it? I mean, is your work really that bad that you can't put it out there and then move on to the next thing? I don't know. That's kind of a difficult one, but yeah, just try to avoid that trap. Let's see. Are these questions? Let's see. Okay, let me try this one. Ad Woosley, is there a distribution level, readership level that makes a comic worthwhile? Is there a number of a number between 0 readers and 1 million that you should realistically target. A realistic target, sorry, I'm a little bit dyslexic, so I have trouble reading this stuff, but a realistic target goal for indie comics. Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, obviously you want as many people to read it as possible, but you know, you got to start somewhere, and you got to start building an audience somewhere. And you know, my comics don't have this massive readership, but I still put them out. And also knowing that, you know, I put these out as my comics out as individual issues, just so that I have something to put out there. And they may not have the biggest readership, but it's just a way, it's like a benchmark, because eventually I do want to put my comic book out as a completed volume. And when that happens, then I will really double down, and I'll try to do a lot, you know, more targeted marketing and get more people to read it once it's complete. Whereas right now it's just kind of, I don't worry so much about for me, it's sort of a passion project. It's not something that brings me in a lot of money. It's all the ancillary stuff I build. You know, I do what I do on YouTube. It helps build my audience. I make digital products that I sell that have to do with making comics. So that kind of stuff does bring in some money. But the comics itself, for me, is just a labor of love. So I don't know. I mean, you want as many people to read it as possible. But if you're new to comics and you've got just a few, you know, readers that really love what you're doing, I mean, that's something there, and that's something to build on. So, yeah, that's difficult for me to quantify what a good, you know, readership is. Just, you know, I just keep putting out your work and hope your readership. I mean, if your readership is falling off, that might be a problem, but you should be gaining readers the more stuff you put out and everything, and just keep building on that. Everyone's got to start somewhere. So especially in indie, where you're kind of an unknown. I mean, you got to start small and start building that stuff. All right. Okay. So there's this is similar to the drawing one. This is from Mert Sensor. Hi Scott, how's it going? Question: can you explain how to come up with ideas? I'm going to refer you to, if you go to Making Comics 101, it's like one of the first episodes. I've got a whole episode on coming up with ideas. So I'm probably not going to retread those here, but definitely check out that video, because that's going to give you a lot of ideas on how to come up with ideas. But so. Let's see. All right, here we got another question from Tally. How do you use your comics to get involved with your community? That's a good question. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by community. If I'm thinking like artist communities, like the 100s community, the 100 Days Making Comics. Where it's sort of, you know, it's a group of people that, you know, come together to hold each other accountable, to get their books, you know, completed. And, you know, we've done the anthologies and everything. So, so with that, yeah, I mean, I can, you know, everyone's creating comics and kind of coming together with that. As far as like community, like, whatever community you're talking about. I mean, comics are really amazing. I mean, and there's something that's relatively easy to read, because it's a visual medium. It's easy to get your point across, because people, you know, they don't really necessarily have to. You can do a comic without words. So whether you're creating pamphlets to build awareness for a particular cause, or whatever that community is, I mean, yes, comics are a great avenue for that. And I've known people like Ronnie Gunther. He's got a condition called is it dysplasia? I'm trying to I forgot what it's called, but and he's done awareness comics for that, and it's just really is a great way to build awareness. I've got another friend that's helped me out with some stuff, that has a daughter who has a skin condition, and he's done. I don't know if he's necessarily done comics, but he's designed stickers and things to build awareness for that, because it's kind of an uncommon thing that needs more people to know about it. So yeah, I mean, as far as, if that's what you're talking about, as far as community, yes, comics are an excellent Okay, in terms of, okay, so she says in terms of your target audience. So let me see if I can phrase that. How do you use a comic to involve? Well, this gonna kind of, let me see if I can, as I got some other questions here too that may kind of make sense to go into with this. Let me kind of go through that because they may go hand in hand. Let's see. So I've got a series of questions from Tim, and some of these can kind of be rapid fire. So one of these questions is, should comic books have page numbers? I don't think that's really necessary. I don't put page numbers on my comics. If you put something that's a larger, a larger story, if it's, then that could be helpful. Because comics are a visual medium, it's not too hard to find the page you're looking for, describe it and everything. Whereas with prose, where it's all words, it's a little hard to find your place and everything. So I don't know that it's necessary to do page numbers. It doesn't hurt. It's not going to hurt anything. It's one of those things that's kind of a choice. If you are working with something that's a little larger, a larger story, then maybe it would make sense to do page numbers, but not necessarily required. And then let's see, and this is more about some publishing questions. I'll see if I can go through these. We are going to purchase barcodes for comics. I know you mentioned it, but did you go into detail on other than Amazon, what Amazon provides, but what outside of Amazon, if any, if we already have them, can we still sell them on Amazon? So basically asking if you can sell, if you can purchase your own barcodes and sell books on Amazon. So I'm just talking specifically, I mean, you can sell anything basically on Amazon, but I'm going to talk about publishing through KDP on Amazon. They will provide you with a free barcode. Their barcode only works on Amazon. Now, that doesn't mean you can't take that book and sell it in like a comics shop, but they just won't be able to scan that barcode. It only works for Amazon. But they'll give you that for free. Now, that doesn't mean that if you already have a barcode that you can sell in other places, that you can't upload that to Amazon's KDP program. They'll ask you when you're uploading if you already have a barcode, and you can do that. The other tip, there was, I think, a question about tips on barcodes. I haven't really purchased a lot of barcodes. The stuff that I publish on KDP, like I said, they've given me my barcode. I sell some books in comic stores. A lot of comic book stores, at least the ones I know, they don't really utilize barcodes or like an, the international, ISBN number. They don't really use those to scan things, partially because the price goes up and it's become collector's items and things like that. So I don't know, but anyway, it's my understanding that at least in some countries, I think barcodes are free. They can be a little pricey here in the US, but you can purchase them in bulk. So if you have a lot of books, it might make more sense to purchase your barcodes in bulks. And I don't even think you have to have the books at the same time. I think you can purchase barcodes and then have them for when you slap on to get your books finished. You already have those ready. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that because I haven't really done that. The other thing, one thing I struggle with is how to get comics in a format that will be best to display on our site, both sample pages and selling them in digital format, which will read as a book. We are seeing very large file sizes, and I'm trying to find the sweet spot for file size, image quality, and what format is best, if not PDF. There's different formats. Like I think Comixology has its own format. But I tend to, when I do my digital comics, I tend to format everything as PDFs. I think it's the most versatile. Sometimes I guess the file sizes can be larger, but you can always zip those files and deliver those. That's what I do. To me, it's never, I mean, you're dealing with art, so a lot of times you it's kind of unavoidable, but you can compress those when you zip them so it doesn't take as long to download and everything. But I would still recommend PDFs for digital comics, unless something like, Comixology has their own thing. They may require that you format it. I've never uploaded anything to Comixology, so I'm kind of, I'm not the best person to ask for that. Let's see. Another question: Where do you host comics? This one I did address. I talked about some of the web comics places. Let's see. I'm trying to find the best way to keep a DB, which I assume is database, of all of our comic titles, issues, retail price, etc. I know I could use Excel, but thinking big picture over time, that this may not work as well as we are or would want it to. I also entertain the idea of having to access. Let's see. Anyway, so it's basically thoughts about building a database for your comics. Now, I don't have. I've got Young and the Dead, and I've only got 4 issues so far. So it's not a whole lot to keep track of as far as my comics. But I do a lot. I publish a lot of like coloring books and just general books on Amazon through KDP, and I do catalog those. And I use Google Sheets, which is basically Google's version of Excel spreadsheets. And I'm not really I'm not too familiar with spreadsheets. I know a little bit. I know enough to do what I need to do and all that stuff. So that's how I keep track of everything. I keep track of, because I've got different brands that I publish under. So I keep track of my brands. I keep track of my keywords that I use for people to find them. I keep track, and I do just basically do that in Google Sheets. So that's my, there's probably is a better way. And if anyone knows a better way to catalog your books and things like that, let me know. So let's see. Okay, now let's see. I've got a few more questions here. Might be getting a little close to the end here, but let's see. We answered the one about references. Was there anything that I wanted to elaborate on that? Yeah, as far as going back to references and stuff, the one thing that I would say, I talked about how trying not to use references as a crutch, and there's a lot of things that I have drawn so many times that I don't even need references for anymore. So I think the goal is, if everyone needs to. There's things that you just haven't drawn before. So how do you know how to draw something if you can't look at a picture of what that thing is? But then there's some things that I've drawn so many times that I don't need reference anymore. So I think the goal is, especially with things that you've drawn so many times, and I'd love to be able to get so good at anatomy. I don't know if I'll ever get there where I don't need any kind of reference, but I don't know too many artists that can do that. There's a few out there, and they're pretty amazing. But yeah, just certain poses, like a lot of poses, especially when you get people who are like embracing, or like just different things where you've got two people together, whether they're hugging or somebody's picking somebody up or something, where drawing an individual character is one thing. Putting them together where you've got one person kind of supporting the weight of another person or whatever, or leaning against, or whatever, that kind of stuff is difficult for me. So a lot of times I will use references for stuff like that. But whatever the case is, I think the goal is to eventually get to the point where you might not need references for everything. Let's see, what else do we got here? Okay, so this is from David. I really appreciate your YouTube content, and your entrepreneurship is inspiring. I'm going to self-publish my first graphic novel. What are some good ideas for promos that I could put in the back of a comic? I thought of a free sticker giveaway with a self-addressed stamp envelope, or a promo for future comics. Now, I really like that. I like the idea of the self-addressed stamp envelope. You may not, who knows how many takers you'll actually get, but that's pretty cool, where you just mail somebody, an envelope with a stamp on it, unsealed, and then you can mail back stickers. So it's not going to cost you anything. It's going to, a little time just to stuff the envelope and put it in your mailbox. But I really like that idea. That's something good, and it also requires some interactivity or some effort for the person reading it. So if somebody actually does that, they're probably interested in your comic, so it gives you some feedback. If you get a lot of that, you're getting a good response there. So I really like that idea. As far as like promos and things, I always like, depending on the comic, if I was to do Young and the Dead differently, I may have done it a little more like this, more like it was an 80s comic done on maybe like newsprint or with that kind of coloring style. Even though it's in black and white, it may look cool in that, to do it like an 80s comic with more homages. But with that kind of comes with those old those old ads, like the old, mail away for, these things where you sell all these items and get prizes, or just all these novelties that you see in the back of comics. It might be fun to do something like that that's sort of in the spirit of your comic, if your comic warrants that type of thing. I did something interesting. This is a little different, but I did something interesting. I had a convention and my book wasn't done. I think it was the 3rd issue of Young and Dead. It wasn't done yet, but I had a few pages done, and I wanted I know people were waiting for it. So what I did was I created a mini comic with like a preview, and I sell those mini comics for like $1. But with that, there'd be $1 coupon off of the next issue. So if you bought that comic for $1, you get $1 off. So you're not out anything if you actually take advantage and if you do purchase the issue. So that was a way to get people not only to, whet their appetite for the book, but also, hopefully get them to spend the extra $3 or $4 to get the comic later on. But there's all kinds of really, fun ideas you can think of little promos and things like that. I like, things like Mad Magazine did with the fold-in cover. Now, not a lot of people are going to fold their comics or whatever, but it's cool just to kind of have that. Same thing with like, you can do like cutout masks or like little paper dolls of your characters that you can cut out. Again, probably not going to cut out, but just as a piece of art or kind of an advertisement. I think that's kind of a cool idea to have something on your comic. And it kind of a throwback to those old, when they used to have that kind of stuff. Fan clubs, like same thing with the self-addressed stamp envelope. You can put together like a little newsletter along with some stickers or whatever and create a fan club or something that somebody could mail away their self-addressed stamp envelope. But I really like that because it's interactive. The other thing that's interactive, you can do like a QR code on the back that could maybe lead to either like a digital file of that same comic, or it could be, it could be some kind of, it could take you to a website with, if you have the ability to create some kind of interactive experience or something, it could take you to a website with that, or it could take you pretty much anywhere to anything you want to promote or any kind of service you want to provide, or just make it fun. Don't make it so it's like just total sales pitch, which it sounds like that's the case here because they're like giving away stickers or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do as far as just promos and stuff like that. So let me kind of go through here. Let me see. So I'm going to go back to Tally's comment. So let's see. So I asked because I'm trying to get involved in my community locally since my audience is Haitian teens. Okay. So yeah, again, I think that kind of goes back that, especially if your market is teens, I think a comic is perfect to reach that kind of audience, and whatever message you're trying to put out there. Why not do it with a comic? There's just, like I said, it's easy to digest. It's like infographics. Comics can be used as sort of an infographic. If you've seen the popularity of infographics, or how easy it is, at least for me, I'm a visual learner, so it's a lot easier for me to see, a diagram on how something works rather than, somebody trying to explain it to me. So yeah, I really think that, like those examples I mentioned before with this Dystonia comic that Ronnie Gunther did, and that's the proper name. I blanked. I said it wrong before. Or whatever the case is. Back in World War II, they used comics to teach people how to work on tanks and things like that. So you can do anything with comics. You can like Scott McCloud, you can make a comic about how to make comics. So whatever it is, whatever point you're trying to get across, you can do it in comic book form. And I love that kind of stuff. I just love the way we can communicate with comics. So yeah. So I think we're probably getting, are we getting close? We got a little time left. Let's see what else I got here. Let's see. Let's see here. So I don't know if this is a question, but I'll just go ahead and read it since we're close to the end. Ariana Howard, I'm using an app called MIDI Bang to start my comic, The Eighth Ghost, which I'm thinking about sharing on Webtoons. Which I'm thinking about sharing on Webtoons. Is it possible? Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not familiar with MIDI Bang. Is that so? That's like a drawing app. I think I have heard of that one. There's so many drawing apps out there, and people ask me if I've tried them, and no, it's not a slight on any other drawing apps. It's just I'm kind of set in my ways. Where I mean, just the fact that I'm using Clip Studio Paint now instead of I never really did much drawing in Photoshop. I did some, I did a lot of coloring in Photoshop, but I just never thought it was great for drawing. But Clip Studio Paint for me, because it's inexpensive and it's just perfect for drawing comics. I can't really see bothering trying to draw anything else. So with any other program, but whatever program you use, if you can create art with it, then go for it. I mean, it's kind of whatever works best for you as far as those apps. But yeah, I mean, sure, yeah. So share it on, like I said, share it on Webtoons, share it on Tapas. Whatever you can get. It's like with me, I do a lot of T-shirt designs, and I'll put that stuff. I can put that stuff on one site. It might not sell at all, and then I'll put it on another one, and it sells. So you never know. It doesn't even really have to do with the T-shirt design itself. It just has to do with maybe algorithms or whatever. So you never know it's going to work. So I wouldn't hesitate about putting your artwork on any site that's out. Take advantage of whatever's available, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and just put your stuff on one platform. Put it out there in as many as you have time for. Okay, let me see. Tony Douglas, I'm sure you've answered this question before, but what is the model tablet you're drawing on? Okay, so mine's an older model. I draw on a Cintiq. I think it's a 24-inch HD Cintiq. I bought it used, which meant I paid about half the price because they are expensive. I also but the thing with Cintiqs is they hold value. Walk-on products in general, whether it's Intuos, Cintiq, or whatever, I've still got an old Intuos that's like, I don't know, it's probably like 15 years old right now, and it still works great. Whereas like an iPad, which I also have, I have an iPad, but I don't know how long that iPad is going to last. So I was a little hesitant when I bought it. So far, it seems to be holding up well. It's about a year and a half old now. It seems to still be okay, but I, with the kind of the updates in the software and the way Apple creates their products so that you're constantly got to buy the new thing, and there's sort of this planned obsolescence that, you got to get the next greatest thing, and they want you to upgrade. And sometimes when you upgrade, what you had before doesn't work. So I do use an iPad for just basically for sketching. I don't use it for much other than that. I haven't really got into Procreate like coloring and doing line art or anything, although Illustrator is now available on the iPad, so I may have to look into that because I do a lot of vector stuff as well. And this program, Clip Studio Paint, is available on the iPad, but it's a subscription, so I haven't really thrown down the money, that monthly payment to do the subscription, because I like working from home. I like working, as you can see, I like working on this big tablet and everything rather than on the kind of the smaller iPad. So yeah, I mean, but whatever, I mean, there's so many tablets available. Just do some research. There's all kinds of videos that you can kind of compare the different tablets and find out what works best for you and the way you like to work. Not everyone is me and likes to sit at home on this big giant monstrosity and draw. Some people want something a lot more portable. So find out what works best for you. I mean, this thing's really heavy. It's but anyway, and I would recommend, if you're buying a walk-on product, if you're going to spend a lot of money, see if we can find one used, because chances are you're going to get a good product, and it's going to last. I know a lot of people have bought their Cintiq's used and they're still using them. And so anyway, that's what I use. Let's see. And Victor says MIDI Bang is similar to Clip Studio, but the interface is slightly different. Okay, I'm just curious. Is MIDI Bang, is it free? Because I mean, Clip Studio, a lot of times you can get it for like $50. I mean, that's $50 can be some money, but what you get out of it, I think to me that's almost like dirt cheap for what it can do. So but anyway, yeah, and Clip Studio has just so many different, just all this cool stuff. I don't know. So let's see, do we have anything else? Let's see. Let's see. Here's another. Oops. There we go. Where did that one go? Victor says he prefers Clip Studio. Okay, so that's good because that's what I'm using. But yeah, I don't know. Whatever. The thing is, once you create artwork and you put it out there, you can't look at a piece of artwork and say what program it was created in. So as long as it works for you and the result is good, it's not going to matter when you publish it or whatever, because you can't tell what somebody used or what it goes back to the same PC Mac thing. I work on a PC and a lot of other artists that kind of look down on me because of that, but you can't look at any of my artwork and say, oh, he created that on a PC. And the programs are the same. Photoshop, Illustrator, it's the same program on a PC as it is on a Mac. So I don't really understand that. But yeah, I mean, it's the finished art is what you're kind of wanting to concern yourself with the most. We are definitely getting close to wrapping this thing up. I don't know if I'll be able to answer too many more questions, but I thought so this one, let's see. Mert Sensor, how to draw nice. Can you give some theories? It seems like some of these questions are similar, like just how to draw better, how to improve your drawing. And it's kind of, I just kind of have to go back to the same answer. It's just like a lot of practice, a lot of, we talk about reference, get some good reference, practice drawing, get some references. How closely can you match that reference? How closely, can you take that reference and create something unique from that reference? Can you, do, gesture drawings? Sometimes a lot of people, when they're just asking how to draw better, when you see them, they just start drawing and there's really no underdrawing. You can see all the blue lines in the back of this drawing. That's how I got to that point where I'm just doing these sketches and trying to get this thing to look the way I want it to look. And, and that's how you build better drawings. It's constructing that drawing. It's not just like, okay, this character is going to have a face. I'm just going to start drawing the face. You've got to have that. You've got to have that work, that underwork, and build on your drawings using shapes and everything you can draw is built up of shapes, whether it's cones or cubes or pyramids or cylinders, and how those put together.
Okay, thank you for joining me for another live edition of Making Comics 101. Hopefully I answered your question. If I didn't get to it, you can leave that question in the chat or the comment section rather. If I didn't get to it in the chat, because sometimes those go by pretty quick, or sometimes I may have missed something. And if I did, I apologize. But I get questions all the time, and I do. If I get a question from this, like even other videos, if I get some good questions, I will pull them into a little file, and then I'll refer to those. So if I don't have a ton of questions for that live issue, or if there's something I really want to get to, I can pull from that. But whatever the case is, I will be doing more of these. So if I didn't answer your question, you got another one, just let me know. Shoot me an email at scott@circworks.com, leave it in the comment section, or however you want to get that to me, and I will do my best to answer that on the next issue, episode, whatever we want to call them. We were calling them issues in the previous incarnation of this, but whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But anyway, thank you for joining me, and I will see you guys later. That is all.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at CircWorks on social media, and now you can support the work that I do on Patreon. Do you like making comics? Then go to CircWorks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.